Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to our character development series. Today's topic will be about sincerity, and we'll basically speak about how important it is. Oh my god. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to our character development series. Today we'll be speaking about sincerity and how important it is to act upon sincerity in any form of action or any form of good deed that we do.
So being sincere is basically the base of whether our deeds will be accepted or not by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And before carrying out any task in life, the first thing we need to do is reflect on our intention and correct it and make sure that it's done sincerely and, like you mentioned, wholeheartedly for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you know what, this rectification of intention should always be at the forefront of our mind and our heart, and with a special effort before worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, before carrying out any form of good deed. We should always be reflecting all the way through. So for example, before doing wudu, clarifying to ourselves, right, I'm going to be doing wudu, preparing myself to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, washing my sins away. And then after that, when you're standing on the masalla, you know, even then we have to make intention with what namaz we are going to be, what salah we're going to be reading. It's compulsory for us to make an intention before we pray. So this again emphasizes on how important sincerity and making an intention is before carrying out any form of action.
Definitely, I think it gives you that mental state, or puts you in that frame of mind that, you know, this is the action that I'm going to do, instead of your thoughts being somewhere else and your actions being somewhere else.
Yeah. Because you know what, there's always enough going on around us, and it's very easy for us to get distracted, or our intention to get distracted.
Definitely.
And that's one reason why before we start salah, we always make that intention with what we are reading, to rectify to ourselves we are standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and we are now going to perform prayer.
I think there's a hadith that Rasulullah says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't look at your appearance or your wealth, but rather looks at your deeds and your actions and the intentions that you have behind that. Subhanallah.
That's like the opposite of us, isn't it? We always like look at individuals based on what we see. But the beauty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that He always looks from within. So sometimes somebody can appear to be something else and they're not actually always that. So, I mean, once we reach sincerity in our intentions, we can experience many benefits as well. And we all like to know the benefits of what we can get when doing something good. I think the first thing is tranquility of the heart. This is one that I think we often think of like it's not really a big deal. It doesn't seem like a really big benefit, tranquility of the heart, but it is a blessing on its own. I mean, if your heart is not at ease because your intentions are not right, or you're intending wrong things, you then start to develop anxiety. Because your heart's not easy with what you're doing, you develop like anxiety. It then affects how your body functions. And even in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, verily in the remembrance to hearts find peace. So remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala within the heart, purifying the heart, purifying the intentions, you know what, the heart will find peace. When your heart's at peace, all the rest of your bodily functions start to work nice and smoothly. Your interactions with people become peaceful and easy because of the intention that you keep. I mean, another blessing is that you will be guided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if you're always rectifying your intentions all the time, and it's always the forefront of your mind, and you keep telling yourself, oh, okay, I'm going to do this, I need to clarify my intention, I'm going to do this, okay, I remind myself I need to intend good, then it becomes a second nature to you, that you're always clarifying your intention. Then doing good becomes easy because you're always intending to take the good out of every situation. For it's somewhat small, like for example, when taking say the kids to masjid, they know they're going to the masjid and they're going to be praying, or they know that they're going to be going there to read their sabak. But just stopping for 1 minute and saying to your child before they enter the masjid, make intention that today I'm going to please Allah. From that, their rewards will have tripled and doubled. Just stopping and taking a minute.
Exactly what you just said, it made me reflect on, there's so many deeds that we do on a daily basis, and we don't really ponder upon that we can actually make so many good intentions behind each and every action. Like for example, we're always cooking every day, and we can actually make that intention that Ya Rabbi, give us the tawfiq to make this food to gain that better health for ourselves, for our loved ones, for our neighbors. Waking our children up in the morning, giving, making another intention, like you said, Ya Rabbi, give us the tawfiq to, wake our children up so that they have a good form of education, and that betters them for this life and the akhirat. So there's so many, like you said, making that intention, and without making intention, okay, it's fine to act and do that deed, but you're getting double reward.
So it's an opportunity all the time that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to us to gain more and more rewards. And at the same time, the biggest blessing is that you achieve sincerity, because you continuously reminding yourself, why are you doing it, what are you doing it for, and you will gain that peace and tranquility within your heart. One of the other blessings of being sincere is acceptance of du'as. Now everybody wants their du'as to be accepted, and there was even a story about 3 men that got locked inside a cave because of a big stone that fell down, and all of them decided that, we're going to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to free us from this cave, to move this big rock, by asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept a really good deed that we've done. So each man, he pleaded to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that look, I did so and so deed, and I did it with sincerity and wholehearted for your sake. For that one good deed, please, free us from this cave, move that rock. And each man did that. And believe it or not, when they prayed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, every time one man did dua and said, Ya Allah, for the sake of that good action that I did, and I did it purely for your sake, please free us from this cave, move that rock. The rock moved a little bit. Then the second one moved a little bit more. Then the third man, he did the same dua, asking for Allah ta'ala to, through his good deed that he did for the sake of Allah ta'ala, through sincerity, please, free us from this cave. And the rock completely moved by the third man, which shows that, look, sincerity can move rocks. You wouldn't think that it has so much weight or so much power.
Definitely.
But it actually does, and your du'as do get accepted. You can intercede for yourself through good deeds, through sincerity.
I think, have you ever met somebody who you've never, you've come across, should I say, you've come across somebody who you've never ever met in your whole life, but then there's it's like a feeling that you have that you've seen them or you've met them before. And subhanallah, I think that's a reflection of your soul. So when you have a sincere soul or a pure soul, and theirs is of the same, and you do feel that, subhanallah,
the realm of souls, where you kind of you're attracted to the people that are like yourself, similar to you, and you have that, when you meet them, you feel like you have this instant warmness, but at the same time, sometimes you feel like, I recognize you, I've met you somewhere before.
I think when I was researching about this topic, subhanallah, the thing that got to me the most was that the love that the residents have for you, that are in the heavens and the earth, subhanallah, so that even the angels, they know of our actions and our sincerity and our, what intentions we have. And that, like you said in previously, it reflects in your eyes, in your character, in your body language as well. And it's just, I think it's a form of appearances. It's a form of sauna that you have, like an aroma that you have.
You mean that Allah Ta'ala dresses you with that beauty, because you purify your intentions for His sake, and that good deed that you do then beautifies you. Absolutely. So you mentioned about the inhabitants, people beginning to love you because of sincerity. So the reason for that is because once you continuously rectify your intentions and you're doing everything for the sake of Allah, your actions become good. So without a doubt, people will love you because your every action is for the sake of Allah, and of course the action will be good. You will be always doing things to benefit others, to bring ease and happiness to others. So definitely one of the benefits is that people will come to love you. But there's the other side as well, that what are the downfalls of not being sincere? And I think one of those is that a person falls into another disease, which is riya, which is like showing off. If you're not sincere, one of these diseases that can enter your heart is showing off. For example, say me and you, we go to Umrah together, and then we sat down, we're having our meal, and then I'm saying to you, oh, you know what, I've done about 4 Umrahs, how many have you done? And you turn around and say to me, well, I've only done 1. I'm like, oh, well, I've done 5 in that amount of time. And then, this is lack of sincerity. You might have only done 1, but you did it purely for the sake of Allah. That will be accepted. But if I've done 5 and I'm showing off I've done 5, who says that's going to be accepted, especially if it was insincere? So it's this thing of showing off. When this disease enters, this is when we lose sincerity. Another category is hypocrisy. Okay, so for example, if you're not sincere, when you're at home, you may have a different character with your family, with your friends. When you go out, you might have another character, another demeanor, and everyone thinks you're great when you're out and about. But when you're at home, totally different. Or you might be really good with somebody when you're out and about. When you come home, you start talking about them, saying, oh, you know, so-and-so, she was wearing this, or, you know, so-and-so, he was doing that. So you become a hypocrite. You begin to get two faces. And this is one of the characteristics and traits which Allah Ta'ala dislikes. He absolutely hates that inside of a person. So the lack of sincerity can cause these illnesses to take over the heart.
Definitely.
And
I think, you know, it's just touching upon what you just said, you know, like what you were speaking about with show off. I remember hadith that Rasulullah said that they were speaking to their companions and they said to them that I fear for you more than the dajjal is a person who looks at somebody else and beautifies his salah. And then it just goes to show that it could be in any form. You know, that, you know, like just because somebody else is watching you, you're trying to do the utmost or
lengthen your salah.
Better perform that action just because somebody else is watching.
So this exists within worship as well, unfortunately. Not just in worldly matters or dealings. It can exist within worship, like the example that you just given. So this lack of insincerity in the heart, unfortunately, it can lead a person to the hellfire unless we save ourselves by obviously repenting and continuously renewing our intention all the time. Otherwise, our deeds will be worthless on the day of Qiyamah. Allah Ta'ala says that we should return the deeds they have done and scatter them like dust. This is if you didn't do it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's sake, you did it for the sake of people, for the sake of showing off, like you mentioned. I mean, what is the purpose of dust? The dust is the purpose of burying something. It's like completely finished, you know. Hazrat Imam Ghazali said that the servant is not freed from Satan except by sincerity, meaning that Satan will accompany you on every single thing that you want to do, and he will be continuously whispering in your ear in every single action. The only way that you can get rid of him is by renewing your intention and say, I'm doing it for the sake of Allah. That's the only way you can. Otherwise, he will be there whispering, trying to ruin your every action that you're trying to do. And that's how we end up, if we listen to the whispers of shaitan and we're not sincere, that's how we end up with these diseases in our heart. We end up with hypocrisy, not being honest, showing off. These diseases then take over our heart, and that's when we end up bankrupt on the day of Qiyamah. So sincerity is very important.
I think, you know, what you just mentioned, like for example, always keeping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala there, you know, making sure that, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there for our protection. Once we kind of fall off that realm and just think, you know, we are who we are because of ourselves and stuff like that, that's when you know, we start to lose our connection. And it just reminds me about a story that I know about. There was a poor fisherman, and he had a dependency. He had his wife and his son, and he was in awe. He was thinking, how am I supposed to maintain a good, you know, livelihood for them? So he went off to the masjid, spoke to the imam, and he was crying, he was emotional, and the imam, subhanallah, advised him that read 2 rakats nafil, and then when you go to find any form of stock, you know, take Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's name. So the fisherman went to go, you know, to the river bank, and when he took Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's name, he caught a huge fish, went to the market, sold it for a loaf of bread, right? Subhanallah. And on his way home, he met this woman and her son, and they were both dying of starvation. And he thought to himself, I at least am the keeper of my wife and my child, but this woman here and her son, they've got nobody to protect them. So he offered his loaf of bread to them and thought, you know, subhanallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has provided this. So inshallah, with this intention, with this pure intention, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will compensate me better. So they've gone, the man's gone back home, and subhanallah, within, you know, after some time, there was a knock on the door, and there was this man who said that, you know, this is a form of debt that my father had upon you, and I'm compensating for it. And just with that earning, subhanallah, he became a very wealthy man. And unfortunately, with that wealth though, even though when he began his business, he started giving sadaqah and stuff, but that overtook, you know, this form of show off and hypocrisy overtook him. And then one day he had a dream, and in his dream, his deeds were being weighed. Now, unfortunately, his bad deeds were more than his good.
Mm-hmm.
So there was an angel who said to him, what form of deed can you present to me to increase your good deeds?
Mm-hmm.
So he said, he remembered about this loaf of bread, and he said, I offered this loaf of bread.
Mm-hmm.
So that increased it, but not so much. His bad deeds were of more scale.
Mm-hmm.
And then he said to the angel, the smile on that child's face, subhanallah, and that increased him a bit more, but still it wasn't enough. And then the angel said, what else can you offer?
Yeah.
And the fisherman said that, the weeping of that woman, subhanallah, was like oceans.
Wow.
And when he presented that deed, that was sufficient enough, for him to increase his good deeds more than his bad. So it just goes to show that, like how you mentioned, that any deed that we do, we shouldn't belittle anything, even of the smallest of, of deeds, subhanallah.
Wow. Just because of that sincerity, how he got saved.
Yeah, saved just because of that, subhanallah.
I mean, even our prophets, they were all the best examples of sincerity. The way they delivered the revelations to the people, and they had this inward and outward righteousness, which I think you were trying to mention at the beginning, and is praised in the Quran as well. And this is the example that we should try to follow. And remember our Prophet ﷺ, and this world famous hadith that majority of people know, is that all actions are based on the intentions. Sometimes not everybody can see what your intentions are with why you did a certain thing, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows your intentions, good intention and bad intention. Allah ta'ala is aware of why you set out to do whatever you're doing, what task, whether it be within your salah, like you mentioned about being sincere in your salah. So a person may look at you and think, wow, they're performing a really good act, but inside you're lengthening it. You're not doing it for the sake of Allah, you're doing it for the sake of the person. So that person might not be aware, but Allah is always aware. And you can see that Allah does take account of everything you do for His sake. He is so generous that even when you're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, look, accept this deed of mine, and He accepts it and He relieves you from whatever difficulty and problem you have. So it's a lot bigger than I think we give credit for. Sincerity. And part of sincerity is also to be honest, inwardly, outwardly. Like, I'll give you an example, and I'm only mentioning this because it's like a trend nowadays. Okay, so some people that are on Instagram, and they have to show the best parts of their life, or they have to over glamorize their life to make it look appealable that people that are watching. And then them same people have then made videos saying, well, actually you can't judge us for our lifestyle, you don't see everything, you don't know how things are really. So the reason why I'm giving that example is because the lack of sincerity. So somebody's portraying an image how it actually is, and it isn't actually like that. And people are observing it, they're watching it, but then they should be honest with your inward and your outward. So even when you are on these platforms, be honest with your inward and your outward. And remember to keep in mind as well that honesty is to be consistent with the truth, and that's with your private and your public life. Like the example I just mentioned, it's your private and your public life, to be honest with your dealings with people, and always intending good as well is part of sincerity. Intending good towards everyone and anything. Like the Prophet ﷺ said, love for others what you love for yourself, and dislike for others what you dislike for yourself. For example, even when we give charity clothes, how many of us actually look at the clothes that we're giving to charity? Are we giving a really good conditioned item, or are we giving one that we wouldn't even look twice on, or we wouldn't even put on our kids? This is where sincerity comes in again. How honest are we being? How honest are we being intending good towards others as well?
I was just thinking about the mercy of Allah subhanallah, that like when we intend to do good, Allah subhanallah gives us a reward without even actually following it with an action. And then when we act upon that intention, Allah subhanallah increases our reward. But when we intend to do bad, Allah subhanallah doesn't give us, doesn't write that down as anything, subhanallah. And then when we act upon that bad intention, then it's only written as one, subhanallah. So it just goes to show that Allah subhanahu has given us so much. It's just we need to ponder upon the smallest blessings Allah subhanahu has given us. I also want to speak. I also want to go on with what you were saying. That it's like how to bring that sincerity into your heart. I think the most important thing is try to keep yourself within good company, or try to keep yourself in better company than yourself. always examine yourself and think of yourself really small. And everyone's got that ego in them. Obviously, everyone's got enough. But the best way to kind of take battle of that is to always think low of yourself instead of thinking almighty of yourself.
Definitely. Even like before going to bed at night, you need to take them a minute or so, just having a good reflection. This reflection is very, very important in taking out any diseases of the heart, reflecting, okay, when I did that good deed, when I helped that person out, or when I gave to that person, did I give it the intention because I wanted something back, or did I give it with the intention that is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And if we're all human, everyone makes mistakes. If you did do it you didn't make the intention for the sake of Allah, you know what, rectify yourself now, right, before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, instead of being rectified in the day of Qiyamah and not having anything, because you've lost so much of what good you've done because of allowing these diseases to enter your heart. So rectify yourself now before you are rectified. And how do you do that? Every night before you go to sleep, think about the deeds that you've done, and if you made a mistake, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness. And this constant asking of forgiveness will also allow sincerity to enter your heart, and the blessings as well of sincerity to enter within you.
I think even I think personally, like how you said, your senses and your heart is all connected. It's like if we're gonna sit within the company that are, like, for example, gossiping, backbiting, you're not gonna be pure. If you're not gonna be in a pure state, how are you gonna attain that sincerity?
Yeah, true.
Watching bad stuff or even listening to something, speaking of ill, that's not gonna attain your sincerity. It's not gonna allow you to actually even seek refuge because you're far from it.
Yeah.
And then obviously the further you become from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you lose that connection.
Yeah.
And then when you're so deep into it, then you realize that there's no help here.
Yeah. So inshallah, I think from sincerity, the most important thing is that we continuously reflect on every single action that we do, continuously training our mind to think, why am I doing this? What is the purpose of this? And training our mind to continuously remember, I need to do this for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even if shaitan does whisper, and we're all human, continuously just taking it back and saying, you know what, I'm not going to listen to that. I'm doing this for the sake of Allah.
I think it's a battle with your thoughts as well, subhanAllah. Even if you're not going to act upon it, sometimes obviously everyone has this battle with their thoughts. I think that's such a beautiful kind of character to have, having that, constant, okay, this thought's coming to my mind, I'm going to make sure I fight it before it actually becomes an action.
Yes, definitely. Jazakallah khair for listening and watching, inshallah. We hope that the series of character development is helping yourself and also at the same time helping us as well. Jazakallah khair.
Jazakallah.